So that was season 1 of The Wheel of Time, and my overall opinion is still being baked in the oven, with the cooking timer set for another couple of rewatches. But I know that you guys are hungry for that sweet content, so let's crack on with some small starters in the form of the best and worst changes from the TV show. I was a huge advocate for change going into Amazon's adaptation, and boy did we get a bunch. But not all of them, I believe, for the better. That said, it's always good to start things off on a positive note, and I'll take any excuse I can get to talk about my favourite character, Nynaeve, so let's start with her. The early changes to Nynaeve's story in the first few episodes filled me with hope for the rest of the series. Having Nynaeve taken by a Trolloc during the Battle of Winternight is exactly the kind of curveball I wanted the show to throw at us. Of course, book readers and people who paid very close attention to the trailers will know this was a fake out. But it still provided an opportunity to show Nynaeve's resourceful, determined, and just generally badass qualities early on. The shot of the bloody Aes Sedai symbol in the water as we hold our breath waiting to see if Nynaeve will emerge is one of my favourite visuals from the series. I'm torn because the cliffhanger at the end of episode 2 was also a series highlight for me, but it did take away some of the tension from the previously mentioned scene. I'm wondering if a cliffhanger of just a sword against Lan's neck and his reaction would have worked better, keeping Nynaeve's reveal until after the cold open in episode 3. I'm in two minds, so let me know what you guys think in a comment down below. I also enjoyed how the show used Nynaeve's ability to channel as an explosive revelation at the end of episode 4, though I think the specifics of the scene could have done with some finessing. If it had just been Lan who needed healing, I think that could have had more of an emotional impact. But healing one person doesn't show off Nynaeve's incredible ability with the One Power, I hear you say. And I agree, which is why I would have her be the one to gentle Logain in her grief-triggered rage. This would add a more complex dynamic to the scenes in the White Tower later on, but more importantly would create an interesting guilty/regretful relationship between Nynaeve and Logain that could give a certain discovery down the line a bit more drama. This is unfortunately where the show's version of Nynaeve stops improving on her book counterpart and sadly begins to worsen in my opinion. This has nothing to do with Zoe Robbins's performance, which is phenomenal throughout, perfectly presenting the bossy and entitled yet caring and clever characteristics of my Wheel of Time #1, and
darn it, I've got a crush on you.
Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe Nynaeve's block is mentioned anywhere in the following 4 episodes, and this to me is a big mistake not to include in the show. She's the strongest female channeler for 1,000 years, and yet can only touch the power when she's angry. This caveat is crucial for her character's development in the books and makes for much more interesting confrontations. Now, you could argue that in the 3 instances we see Nynaeve channel in the show, she is under a lot of stress and therefore could be overcoming the block. But the problem is, without seeing an example of Nynaeve when she can't channel, her superb strength with the One Power does begin to run the risk of feeling like a convenient Deus Ex Machina. I'm really hoping the block is fully established in season 2 because it would be a disservice to Nynaeve's character not to be included. I also want to briefly touch on the changes made to Matt's character in the show. Again, this is a change I was very on board with from the beginning. Having Matt come from a more impoverished background does create a more believable motivation for his behaviour. Having to bet, bargain, and in some cases steal just to get enough money to support his family, in particular his younger sisters, is a much more identifiable reason to, I don't know, take a clearly cursed ruby dagger from an even more obviously cursed evil city. I also really liked the advanced changes to Rand and Egwene's relationship. It added a believable emotional core to the heart of Rand's character arc, which was utilised really well in the final episode, forcing him to let go of the life he hoped to have with Egwene and accept his destiny as the Dragon Reborn. One of the few positive things you'll probably hear me say about the series finale. Having that relationship be more established made that possible future all the more tangible and therefore all the more tragic when it was torn away by the events of the series. I also really appreciated the changes made to Moiraine and Swan's relationship, despite it being a future nightmare for the White Tower HR department.
But you two work together. You two work together. Hey, what the hell's going on? They're together! They can't be together, they're co-workers.
The final positive change I'll talk about on this list is Logain. More specifically, the cold open of episode 4 with Logain and his forces attacking Ghealdan. Not only was it an action-packed start to the new subplot, it was also a visually interesting way of delivering exposition about Saidin and the Taint. Double points to the creative team because that's the type of show don't tell shit I'm all about. This is exactly the type of new scene I was hoping to see in the show. An event that we hear about in the books but couldn't witness because we were tied to a certain character's perspective. The TV show, on the other hand, isn't bound by these rules, and I wish we'd seen a few more scenes like this to introduce new characters and expand the world. I also really enjoyed both cold opens with Tigraine on Dragonmount and Lews Therin in an episode of The Jetsons, but I'm counting both as flashbacks and not independent scenes like Logain's introduction. Now let's talk about the changes I think didn't work out for the TV show. First up, we have Perrin and all things wives, wolves, and weird love triangles. I'd like to make it clear that I'm not criticising the changes to Perrin's character and story just because they're different from the book. I completely recognise the need for changes, in particular with Perrin, as a lot of his characterisation in the books is presented through internal thoughts, which don't exactly translate well to a visual medium like TV. That said, having thought about it a lot, I don't think the changes made to Perrin delivered on what they set up and left his character feeling a little flat compared to his book counterpart. Again, this has nothing to do with Marcus Rutherford's portrayal of the character, which I was really looking forward to seeing going into the show and did not disappoint. The moment where he stands up to Rand during that ridiculous reveal, we'll get more into that later, was intimidating and strong and powerful and...
Darn it. I've got a crush on you.
As soon as Matt dropped the bombshell that Perrin was married, I was having Min-like visions of fridging complaints whirling around Layla's head. From a storytelling perspective, I can see how accidentally killing your wife is an effective way of getting across a character's fear of their own strength. And so I was willing to let the show convince me that this was a good idea. After all, the grief is an interesting addition to Perrin's complicated relationship with violence, and episode 1 gave us some hints that something was a little off about their relationship that I was hoping would be revisited. Instead, the latter subplot amounted to little more than a totally left field love triangle between Perrin, Egwene and Rand. I'm going to go ahead and assume that's why Layla wasn't at Egwene's ceremony and why Nynaeve was acting a little bit sus towards Perrin at the start of episode 1. Unfortunately for the series, this revelation came after 4 weeks of audience speculation about dark friends and potential miscarriages, and when your audience is coming up with better ideas than what we eventually learn is true, you know you f***ed it. It's not like the series, and Rand in particular, is lacking for any love triangle drama later on. Perrin's relationship with violence is explored a little further when he and Egwene travel with the Tinkers and learn about the Way of the Leaf. But overall, Perrin's arc for Series 1 feels a little underdeveloped and nowhere near as interesting as the inciting incident that kicked it off. I think this is because Perrin's internal struggle with causing harm to other people is directly tied to his relationship with the wolves, which is significantly downplayed in the TV show. Like Nynaeve's block, the constant fear that he will lose control to the more violent, wolf-like part of himself is a crucial factor for Perrin's character growth. Without dedicating time to explaining what a wolf brother is, this storyline will always feel half-baked and has me wondering if scenes with Elias should have been prioritised over the Tinkers to clarify Perrin's inner conflict fully before offering a possible solution like the Way of the Leaf. I really wish during Egwene and Perrin's escape from the White Cloaks in episode 5 that we'd been allowed to see Perrin wreak havoc with his axe, intercut with short, snappy shots of wolves' jaws and claws and blood-stained white cloaks, all culminating with a horrified-looking Egwene staring at a post-rage, terrified Perrin. Tell me that's not how you get across a character's fear of their own strength without fridging. The final change I want to talk about is a bit of a controversial one. It's obvious that for the show, the creative team wanted new fans asking the question, who is the Dragon Reborn. In order to add to the list of possible candidates, they changed the law so that the dragon could be respun out of the pattern as a man or woman, and also moved revelations like Rand's parentage much further along the plot. Now, I don't have a problem with any of these changes, but what I do think could have worked better is if Moiraine hadn't spilled the beans so early on to the Emond's Field gang that the dragon was going to be one of them.
Always in such a rush, these humans.
I think the story could have just as easily been kickstarted by Moiraine telling the villagers that the Dark One was after them, and if they didn't leave, it would be their loved ones that suffered. This is motivation enough without dropping the clangor that one of them might be the reincarnation of the channeler who broke the world. That's not to say the audience wouldn't be clued in, either through Moraine's opening monologue or secret conversations between her and Lan. I think this would add another layer of suspicion and tension between the Aes Sedai and villagers. It would also be interesting to hear the characters' uncensored thoughts and feelings about the dragon and the prophecy without them realising that they're part of it. At the start of the books, the dragon is feared almost as much as the Dark One, and this makes the final revelation that Rand is Lews Therin reincarnated almost tragic and, more importantly, isolating. When the rest of the Emond's Field gang find out, they act very differently around Rand, and this becomes a big source of drama for the following few books. Considering that in the show, all the villagers have had to come to terms with the fact that they might be the dragon, I don't believe we'll see a similar level of fear and unease towards Rand, which I think is a shame. Anyway, it's easier to look at a finished series and say how it could have been better than it is to actually create an adaptation of a beloved book series. So I would just like to extend my thanks to the creative team for bringing the Wheel of Time to life on screen. And I am seriously looking forward to Series 2 and seeing the Seanchan. And thank you to everyone watching this video. Please do let me know what changes you loved and which ones you loathed in a comment down below. And as always, like and share this video, and if you'd like to see my full series non-book reader review with a special guest, then hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys as soon as I can.